In 1944, the genocide of the Jewish population in Europe, the Nazi final solution, the Holocaust, targeted the Jews of Hungary. The country was divided into 6 regions, one of which was Budapest. Starting in late April 1944, and for the ensuing 2.5 months, the entire Jewish population in the 5 regions outside of Budapest had been stripped of its possessions, interned, ghettoized, and deported. Then, systematically, almost all were killed in the death camps, mainly Auschwitz. There remained only the Jews of Budapest. At the beginning of July 1944, Raoul Wallenberg, a 31-year-old citizen of Sweden, was sent to Budapest as first secretary of the Swedish diplomatic mission. Mr. Bruce Kent is the Vice President and Director Portfolio Manager at RBC Dominion Securities. He's very active in community and cultural affairs in Montreal. His mother and grandmother were in Budapest in 1944 and survived in one of the Wallenberg safe houses. They are dear friends of my family. We are honored that Mrs. Agnes Kent is with us this evening. Elle accompagne notre prochain orateur, son fils, Monsieur Bruce Kent.
Thank you, Joe. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My mother was saved by Raoul Wallenberg, and we're so very fortunate to have her here with us today. The Holocaust was so mammoth, so huge in size, so evil, that it's often difficult to put a human face on it. 6 million people killed for no other reason than they were Jewish. Who were those people? They were people like you and me. Likewise, Raoul Wallenberg's acts of courage, he saved tens of thousands, were staggering in number. As time moves on, there are fewer and fewer survivors left who were eyewitnesses to those events. This afternoon, we are fortunate to have with us a number of people who were saved by Wallenberg. My friend Ron Meisels, my mother's very dear friend, Judith Prince, and of course, my mother, who's right here. When Joe asked me to speak, I thought who better to talk about Wallenberg and express what he represents than my mother herself.
My name is Agnes Lörinczi Kent, born in 1928. I feel privileged to address you who assembled here to honor Raoul Wallenberg. I wish to share my memories with you, knowing well that many of you also have stories to tell. Budapest in October 1944 was under Nazi and Arrow Cross rule. The 4-story apartment building we lived in was designated as a Jewish house marked with a yellow star. Countless displaced Jewish families were forced to move in, crowding all the rooms. We all wore the Star of David to identify us. My father and uncle, a doctor and an engineer in their 50s, were rounded up one morning with all the other men. Both perished during a forced march towards Austria, shot on the roadside because they could not walk anymore. Miraculously, my mother was able to get the precious Wallenberg safe papers. Raoul Wallenberg, a Swedish diplomat, issued these documents to put the recipients under the protection of the Swedish government. We tried to send the precious documents to my father and my uncle at a holding station close by, but they never reached them. Most likely, the person we trusted to deliver the documents sold them on the black market. With our papers, my mother and I were so very lucky to be able to move into a safe house under the protection of Wallenberg. Our building was filled to capacity, but soon our safety was in jeopardy. Gestapo and Arrow Cross forces entered and randomly executed people on the shores of the Danube. We could hear the fatal shots clearly. As we did not feel safe anymore, my mother and I were able to contact a Gentile family on the outskirts of Budapest, simple working-class people who allowed us to stay in their air raid shelter under false identity while heavy bombing raged over the city. Budapest was liberated by the Russian army in January 1945. Without Wallenberg's fearlessness and vision, I would not be here to relay these words. Later, in Montreal, I was part of the Wallenberg International Movement for Humanity for years, working along the side of Vera Parnas, the heart of the organization. Vera's life was dedicated to keeping the values and memory of Raoul Wallenberg alive. She passed away and is missed by all. The Wallenberg Monument is a place I visit, thanking him from the bottom of my heart for his courage and heroism. Without him, most likely, my life would have ended under tragic conditions. Thank you for listening.
Today, we're here to remember, to honor, to commemorate. 2 years ago, my mother and I traveled to Budapest with my wife and our 2 teenage daughters. We visited that apartment building my mother spoke about, the place she grew up. The building designated a Jewish building in 1944 and was crammed with people. We visited the Wallenberg safe houses, where my mother and my grandmother sought refuge. It's painful for my mother to remember